Hello to everyone that is out there watching. It is a wonderful day. It's beautiful where I am. I'm not sure where you are, but I'm so glad you're here. My name is Jackie Jones, the Jackie Jones, as you can see right there. I am founder of Elevation Academy, also CEO of Wondery Marketing, and I am super excited that you are here with me today. Now, if this is your first time joining us, please know that I am always here for you commenting. Please say hi in the comments. Tell us who you are if you want to. It's going to pop up. We're going to put it on the screen. This is a very relaxed space, though we have some very important things to talk about because marketing is always important. At least to me it is. But please say hi so we can pop it up there. Let us know that you're here, interact, all those fun things. So I don't believe in wasting any time, especially not yours. It's so important. And so I'm going to quickly bring up the person I have with me. Before I do that, I want you all to know that I just really love this person so much. It's like you don't know who it is but you saw the flyer clearly. That's why you're here. But I really love him. And I'm going to tell you why. I have seen him really truly evolve. You have no idea. I met him so many years ago. I don't really want to try to count them because I will feel like I'm disrespecting my age. But so many years ago, in so many different facets of design, I have seen him operate and create and allow himself the freedom to do that. And so I'm really excited to have him here. So with no further ado, please say hi to Derek DeAndre.
Hello.
Look at that. People are already showing up. Hey, Megan.
Good vibes.
Yes, always, all the good vibes. So how are you, Derek?
I'm well, blessed. How are you?
You know, all that same stuff. Excited to still be on this side. Somebody say amen. Yeah, it's a life. And where are you right now in the world? Because I think everybody always assumes that we're all in the same place and we're not. Where are you right now?
I'm in Marietta, Georgia, right outside Atlanta.
Well, there you go. So Eastern time zone, shout out. It's a little later for you than it is for us, even though I'm probably just as sleepy. So let's jump right in. You know, most people who are probably watching already know who you are. For those who are watching the replay or who do not know who you are, give us just who is Derek DeAndre?
Derek DeAndre is me. I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, currently residing in Georgia. I am a artist of all kinds, both graphic and fashion design have been longtime specialties of mine. I've dabbled in photography for quite some time, so that's another skill set. And overall, just a creative person, try to be a positive person, a positive force in the world, try to put good things out into the world. And I'm currently doing that as a chandler. I just started Home Candle Company in this year. So yeah, big things for that coming. It's already been very well received and I'm very excited about the journey, very passionate about it. So yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because as we get ready to transition into our conversation about brand aesthetic, which I feel like you're the perfect person for this conversation. I told you that when I asked you. I want you all just out there in the world to just watch a little clip. Now, when he says he just launched Home, like how long ago was this? A couple months.
What?
That you launched Home Candle
Well,
Co.
the thing about it is it's not officially fully launched yet. I'm in a beta launch phase, but like the first pop-up shop was April the 9th.
All right, so when I show y'all this video, you know, just know I'm jealous. So let's frame who Home is. And so you can get an idea of just how seriously Derek takes aesthetic. All right, here we go.
Hey, I'm Derek DeAndre, the founder of Home Candle Co., an aroma company that specializes in curating unique and inviting scent experiences by combining luxurious natural waxes with complex international fragrance oil blends. I use the best quality ingredients to produce my clean burn candles and home goods. I invite you to follow the journey on Instagram and Facebook at Home Candle Co. and sign up for the hashtag Home Team email list at homecandle.co. That's HOAM candle.co. Welcome home.
All right, so wow. Yeah, I've been in business for 8 years. I don't think I have a video, let alone one that amazing. So I'm very, very excited that you have that, because it's the perfect way to begin our conversation. So first of all, in the comments out there, please tell me how impressive that was, because I can't be the only one impressed. So you're a designer, like you said, in many facets, right? Many things that you do. You've done fashion design, you do photography, you grow plants. I feel like that's a version of design. You have designed graphic stuff. You have all of these different things. How did you come about this? Where did the design things for you begin?
So based on what I believe design is, I think I've always been one. I think that in many ways we're all designers, and we just have to claim that title as our own. I've always thought about things in a very creative way, and found ways to creatively engineer solutions, which is all design is at its core. And I think that we all have over time made something better or made something our own. That's a form of design, but I guess you could say formally / informally, I first started design in when I was in college, in the more scholarly sense. So I really began to refine what design meant for me through starting fashion. That's when I taught myself how to sew, and then take classes in liberal arts school and try to finagle my way into some type of art school education, because I didn't go to an art school. I didn't go somewhere that had a formal graphic design program, but I took as many classes as I thought would feed my creativity, to kind of be some tools to move forward with. So I didn't graduate school with this great graphic design portfolio that I could send to agencies or anything. I was trying to craft all of that at the end, with the few things that I had figured out how to do on my own, really.
Really? That
Yes.
is interesting, because most people, we teach ourselves things, but what kind of stuff did you teach yourself? Because I feel like I've taught myself things as well. As a marketer, when I first started doing 1 degree stuff, I did not have any Adobe training, anything. And I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to do whatever I need to. And that just kind of grew over time. So what kinds of things did you find yourself seeking after that were more formal, that kind of just fit and fed that creativity?
So in regard to fashion, my first year I worked in the weaving department. So I spent parts of my days actually making Can you see me?
I can hear you. There you are.
It's learning what it takes to make fabric, and then I took a fibers course to learn how to manipulate fabric, and then I took all of the graphic design electives that we have or that we had. I took a photography class, and from there I got all of, I think, the basic things of what I still do today. I got a little bit of fashion and textile experience, very minimal Adobe experience. I basically taught myself the entire Adobe suite, or the products that I know, Illustrator, Photoshop, Lightroom, and Premiere. I taught myself those, and yeah, I think I answered the question.
You did. So those things still show up. So as you launch a brand, and you've launched multiple brands, because Home Candle Co. is just the most recent. You have Love and Oscar. You've been a part of whole, events and organizations that you've helped launch brands for. How do those kind of technical things that you've taught yourself and that you've taken the time to learn really shown up in creating brand aesthetics for you daily? How does that come up for you now?
I think in working with other people, my experience building things for myself really shows up because I'm able to look at the areas in which I struggled. And we might as well get like a drink alert. You know how on Watch What Happens Live, they do like a word, and you have to drink every time you hear the word. So every time you hear the word story, take a drink, because I'm gonna say that word a lot. But really, figuring out how to establish my own story and helping other people do that is the biggest thing that I think my experience from the past, how that shows up in my daily life.
And that's such a huge part of marketing in general. Like, marketing is a big word for telling stories.
Right.
It's figuring out the stories that work for the audiences and trying to align those things and pull out the stuff where people connect and all that kind of fun stuff. So, when we think about branding in general, but brand aesthetic, what does that even mean? Because I feel like we throw words around in this life. So tell me what you feel like your definition of brand aesthetic is.
So to me, the brand aesthetic is the look and feel of the story that you're telling. I think the aesthetic establishes like trust between your brand and the consumer. It basically lets them know that you're going to show up for them on a daily basis in that way that like made them follow you in the first place. Like we can trust that we can depend on you. Essentially, I think that's what the aesthetic really does. It just strengthens the connection and reinforces the message of the
And
brand.
there's like a familiarity that is created, with brand aesthetic. I always, joke with people. So I love Beyonce. Let's just put that out there as a qualifier here. But I feel like Beyonce's silhouette is like a brand aesthetic, because like you don't actually have to see Beyonce's face to know it's her, and just the way that she kind of presents things. And when you think about different brands, whether it's retail, it could be fast food, you can just kind of look at it and just tell that's them, or at least you go, man, I would have sworn that was so and so, because that aesthetic is so strong. But I think it's interesting how you phrase that it's the kind of look and feel of the story. I think we get story. When I hear story, I think of like the words, how I tell it, the message. And I think aesthetic, that look and feel, kind of if you can experience that story, what it would feel like. I don't know that a lot of people actually ever consider that. So I really like the way you phrase that. Now, here's a question that I think is very important. And again, out there in the comments, if you have questions as we go, feel free to drop them. If you're like me, you'll forget. So feel free to drop them on there. That's totally fine. We are happy to pop them up if they're relevant right at the moment. But otherwise, promise we will get to them. So here's my question. One of my questions. When you are beginning to approach a brand or work with a brand or build a brand, right? Do you have a particular process that you go through to figure out what that brand aesthetic is going to be?
I have a process and I don't have a process. I guess I can say I do, regardless of who or what it is I force the people that I'm working with to be clear on the message that they're trying to send and be able to tell it to me concisely as somebody who knows nothing about the brand. And then from there, based off of like what they say, like we kind of go back and forth until I feel like I could tell your story. Like that's the thing about branding, is like it's not so much just what we say as the business owner, but it's like what do then say about, like, basically can the message that you're communicating visually and through your messaging and the product itself, can that story produce a flawless game of telephone? Because we've all played telephone before, where the message that starts is never the one that gets across the room, and that's the last thing that you want when you're putting something out to people. Like I want to be able to tell Jackie something, and then Jackie go tell the next person and the next person, and the message is relatively the same.
And that's hard to do. Like to, and I love this one. I don't know if this is the end of the process, but let me just pause here. Like, it's very difficult to make it so clear that other people can tell it for you. That's a very difficult thing to achieve. And I think it's harder for small businesses because our minds are all over the place. Like, our minds are like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, and this is where it's gonna go, and this is where, and that's just a constant wheel turning. And so when someone pauses to say, hey, you want to create a logo, or you want to, figure out your brand aesthetic, or you need to take photos or build a website, explain to me what this is and what your story is. All of that has to like simplify and like settle down. I think that's really hard for people to do sometimes. So I think that's very interesting that you start there. I think that's pretty great.
And I start there because I've started things before without the story. I started fashion without the story, and spent a lot of years just doing it like as a creative outlet, and kind of letting it go wherever it went.
Yeah.
And I found that when I wanted to take it seriously, I didn't know what message I was telling people. I didn't know so it was like all of these different perceptions of what Derek, what Love and Oscar produces. I'm making a caftan one day, a wedding gown the next day, so it's like I've started without being clear on the story before. And so I know personally I wouldn't start without it now. And if I'm working with somebody or even just advising somebody, I would admonish them to be very clear on what it is and why it is that they're doing what they're doing.
That's really good. So after we have figured out, are there other steps that help you kind of begin to visualize that in that process?
I have a form online that outlines all of the things that like trigger visuals for me and force them to think too. So it's like in the midst of them figuring out the story, or reestablishing the story for themselves, like they're filling out this form that's asking them questions that's still basically making them figure out what the story is, and then also helping them discover some things that they like and that they don't like and would like to see and all of that. So I have a probing form that does that for me.
And for those of you out there that are watching, marketing word benchmarking, that kind of, are there things that you've seen that you like, that you don't like? I tell people all the time in workshops and stuff that one of the common things I hear from people is, well, I don't look at other people's stuff. I'm my own person, my own brand. I'm trying to, do this for myself. And I'm like, okay, so listen, your audience is looking. So you should too, right? You need to figure out what makes you different, why you all may be selling or, providing similar services or, giving different similar products. And the question is, what's going to make them choose, you over them? Sometimes it's just the story, right? Sometimes, a mug is a mug, right? Like it's a mug. It holds coffee. That's really all its job is. And so where I buy it from might be because of the owner's story. It may be because of the message or the culture of it, or I just like the brand aesthetic, but it's still just a mug. But in order for people to compete, I do think that that's an important question. And that probing is like, what is it that you've seen that makes you go, yeah, I'm trying to do something like that, right? And people are sometimes afraid to do that, which is strange to me. Have you ever had anyone kind of feel that way?
Feel what way? So I can be clear.
Just feel like I don't want to look at, like, I don't know. I just know I don't want to look at other people's stuff, or I haven't seen anything I like. I want something off the charts. And
I haven't had anyone necessarily. I haven't had anybody necessarily say, I don't want to look at somebody else's stuff, but I have had people approach me, and when they approach me, I'm asking them for mood boards. I'm asking them to fill out a form. I'm asking them what the story is. and they want to kind of rush past all of that. Which I think is in a way is like, I don't want to worry about like the story, and I don't want to look at, basically I don't want to do what it takes to produce a brand that actually makes sense, because market research is a part of building the product and also building the aesthetic. Like, you have to know what people within your community or desired community like and are attracted to before you can produce something that actually makes sense for them. I love that you said, a mug is a mug, but sometimes it's the story that sells the mug, or the brand aesthetic that sells the mug. And that's so true, because I'm selling candles, and at the end of the day, we have Bath and Body Works, we have Yankee Candle, we have all of these well-established candle companies, and a lot of other small businesses who sell candles. And it's like, I still have to, like, I can't let that prevent me from moving forward with what I'm doing because somebody else is doing it. I think I lost my point, but I got my point. It's my story that connects with people, and that will help me build my tribe and build my community.
And I'm glad you pointed that out, because that thought process, that a bunch of people are already doing this, man, that is a struggle for a lot of people. And it's like, it's fine. There's going to be people who buy from you because you're you, or because, they do like the story, the aesthetic is different. They feel like, it's handmade, all that kind of stuff that really you have to put into the marketing. Which brings me to my next question, which you don't have to answer until after I show something real quick. But my next question really is, how do you feel like brand aesthetic shows up in your daily marketing? And I think that, sometimes, and we know this from a marketing, company standpoint, people don't want to do that work a lot of times. And they feel like, why am I doing all of this? And it's hard sometimes to kind of remind people or prove to them that this is going to matter every single day. Mm-hmm. And if you will take the time to do it, your daily life will be better. And so I want to ask you how you feel it shows up in daily marketing. But first, I want to play one of the reels from your Instagram, just so people can see one of the ways that you have used. I want to point out, before I do this is the same day as the video we showed, which, as a content creator, you have to use, the space you're in multiple times, right? You can't just do that one thing, get all the stuff while you're there. So I'm going to show that reel, which is a part of your daily marketing. And then I want you to answer that question for me, okay?
Okay.
Let's check this out, y'all.
My head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Head talk, check my nails. Baby, how you feeling? Baby, how you feeling?
I love that reel, because I know that was like launch day for you, or like the first pop-up, the first time that outside of your head and outside of the conversations and the tests and that kind of thing, that you were like, I am set up somewhere to take people's money and like put this out here to the world in some capacity. So I thought that was a really cool reel, because it's a part of your story, which you've done very well to tell. So how do you feel like brand aesthetic shows up daily for us?
Like I said earlier, it's the establishment and the reinforcement of trust on a daily basis, and trust and connection. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that as I'm building home, people are beginning to like know what they can expect from me. Which, full disclosure, with home, part of my aesthetic or my brand voice is complete transparency and authenticity. Seeing right now is a lot of behind the scenes, a lot of the climb and the beginning of home. And I don't want that to disappear as I grow. I still want to maintain like transparency, and people knowing that this is a work in progress, and that this is just me behind this. And so, like, on a daily basis, the aesthetic really just makes sure, in my instance, that people still feel like I'm telling them the truth, feel like they, are seeing something that is that happy ending almost to look forward to, if that makes sense.
I like that though. And you have almost taken like a journal style approach to some of your content, where you're like, hey, this is like the night before and I'm nervous. And I think that's really great because it feels like you go on that journey with the owner and with the creator and that kind of thing. And I think that's actually a very interesting part of small business ownership that people don't really take advantage of. Is some people are just rooting for you and they just want to see that Cinderella story or that happy ending and just know that, hey, I was there when he was like first beginning or something like that. And so that's a really, really powerful piece to it. But you're using that aesthetic in like Instagram and Facebook and websites and everywhere that you've decided how you want to tell that story, you have to bring that up. And that's mostly in digital spaces, such as these. So just to pause here to say, for those of you out there watching, please feel free to visit the website, follow on Instagram. You should have been doing that anyway, but do that. And these are kind of digital spaces. And so as you've talked about this, looking at like your Instagram feed there and looking at the website, we have a lot of similar colors and a lot of similar feel, and it feels homey, which is really exciting because people don't want to feel stressed when they're shopping, and they also don't want to feel unrealistic. But those are digital, and I think that we get very caught up in digital things. How do you feel like, because I'm looking at you in your Home Candle Co. shirt, right? And that's not a digital thing. And so my question to you is like, how important are the non-digital elements to a person's brand aesthetic?
It depends on the product or whatever it is that you're doing, but it should really be a seamless extension of your digital presence, whatever you do in person. Like, it's about creating that same feeling that you are conveying online in person. And so with home, the feel that I want to convey is like comfortable. I want people to feel invited, welcomed, and like they don't have to leave. And that's what I want to present in person as well. And part of it is like doing stuff like wearing this shirt. Like, this is my uniform. I call it my uniform because this is how I'm going to show up in the spaces where I'm representing home. I was looking all around even tonight, like, what I'm about to throw on real quick. And I was like, oh, you about to put on your uniform because you're about to be talking about brand aesthetics, and there's more than just the digital part of it. So
it is
finding all of those ways that you can extend what you do digitally to an in-person experience is key.
And so don't fake it, y'all, on the gram, and then we meet you and you're a completely different person. Yeah. That's really hard for people to understand, because digital can sometimes be easy. It's very hard. It's time consuming to create digital content. But if you are showing up somewhere, and just so we can say this, you don't have to be a retailer for that to be the case. This is the case also in service, because right before we started, Derek and I was joking that, people are going to get the same person no matter how they interact with me. It could be a boardroom, it could be a workshop, and it doesn't really matter how important you think the people are in that room or how unimportant you think those people are. I'm still going to be the same person. I'm going to be laid back. I want people to always feel like they get that from everything that we do, because I don't want any surprises. I don't want them to say, oh, she's so articulate on LinkedIn. And then they meet me and I'm like, hey, what's up? Right. And they're like turned off, right? The thing that I kind of baited them with is no longer there. And I think we forget that extension. And I like the way that you kind of phrased it. It's a seamless extension. Could someone feel like they walked, out of your presence and into your website, right? Or vice versa, off your Instagram and into the pop-up, or whatever the case is. So I think that is a really good way to put that. I'm going to start now asking if people have questions, as I I still have some, don't get it twisted, but I do want to go ahead and prompt you in case you have popped in after I said this. If you have questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. But I do want to ask this question because, we have these conversations and people feel like, oh, but I need some kind of technical, things to remember. So are there any kind of must-haves to your brand aesthetic, right? We know we need to kind of focus on what our story is. But if I'm sitting down tonight after watching this and I'm like, okay, how do I get this thing going, right? Are there any must-haves to creating that seamless experience just in general?
So in regard to creating a brand aesthetic, at a base minimum, of course, you need your mark, be it a word mark or like an actual image as your logo. I think you need to some establishment of a color scheme, or at least like a visual scheme, and then some quality images, really, at a base minimum, because you'll be surprised how far you can get with just some really good pictures. And really good pictures can come from you taking them on your phone, or they can come from you sourcing them from like royalty-free websites like unsplash.com or Pixels, or actually paying some of the stock images sites. So really knowing the story and finding that logo, that color scheme, and then getting you some quality images is like
bare minimum. And let's be honest, I'm laid back about this, and I'm not gonna call anybody out because I don't know who's out there watching. But let's be honest, how often do we come across people who need a design for something and we're like, cool, what are your brand colors? You're like, I don't know. And it's like, please give me somewhere to start, right? Give me a starting point. But then you find, and I also want to say this for anyone who's watching, and my next question really is around outsourcing, but when you don't have those things, you're asking, people for something else. You're not asking them for a design anymore. You're asking them to help you develop a brand. And that's a very different ask than, hey, can you just create something for my company or for my brand? That's a different ask if you don't have at least those bare things. And if you don't, that's fine. I just want you to know if they change the price on you, that's why. Because it's a different ask.
Yeah, and then like in regard to getting because that's a very basic thing and it can change and all of that, but like just know that there is a such thing as like color psychology, and so that's an easy way for you to look at your business and say what colors work well for a food business or a yoga studio or whatever, and see what's out there and see what resonates with you and what's within your industry. That's a quick, easy way to.
And not a lot of people even knew that was a thing. So if that was new to you, don't be ashamed. Tell me in the comments. But people don't know that color psychology is a thing. There are a lot of things that are a thing that people don't understand about, visual design. But color psychology is a real thing. The way that our brains associate things, experiences. And there's a reason why a lot of, fast food places have red, right? There's a reason why a lot of your like home improvement places have oranges and that kind of thing, like those kind of feelings of security and all of that. Some of that is color psychology, which a lot of people don't realize how much they are being manipulated.
Yeah.
But that comes from knowing your audience, like you said, knowing your story, how you want people to feel. And I think that's super, super important. So I'm glad that you brought that up. So if y'all don't know what that is, just Google it. I promise you're going to get all the answers. I would say switch your Google search to images and look at all the just graphics, and they will give you a color wheel and a bunch of, words that associate with it, brands that have, those colors. And that's a really good tool if you're trying to figure that out or trying to adjust. But if you are outsourcing, so if a person is outsourcing, having that, is there any other pre-work to saying, hey, I'm going to go to someone to help me kind of figure out maybe what my website is going to look like or whatever, just take my brand aesthetic further? Is there anything other than those kind of core things that I need to do before I engage someone, you think?
Well, we've already established that you need to have the story together.
Drink.
That in and of itself will save you a lot of time. If you know, if you're clear on what it is that you're selling and why you're selling it and all of that, that can help. That'll knock out a lot of time. Because what I've realized some of the time in working with people is they come to me as a designer, almost hoping that I can help them flesh through some of the business stuff. And I'm like, that's not where I'm really supposed to come in, you know. So having that established, and then also having a budget established when you approach somebody for design work, because that too kind of it helps them determine the scope of work or what they can produce for you. A lot of times, like people will come to me and they'll say, I want you to design a logo, and you know, how much does it cost? Or they'll just say, I want you to design a logo. And I will ask, well, what is your budget? I don't know. I don't really know what this costs. So to me, I'm just like, I can send you my prices, and, that may or may not run you off, or what you have to work with. And I can say, this is what we can do. So have your budget in line, have your story together. And, yeah, I think that's it.
It's funny that you bring up the budget thing, because I actually have seen a very split mindset around the approach to creatives or designers as it pertains to budget, right? So half the world is like, just tell me how much it costs, and if I can afford it, great. If I can't, then I can't, and I'm okay with that, right? The other half of the world, some of us, like you described, are like, if you tell me what you're working with, I can give you an idea of what I'm able to produce for that amount.
Right.
And I found myself, because that's a struggle for some people. If you say, well, what's your budget? Like, I don't really know how much I should be budgeting. And then you come into this kind of back and forth. What came first, the budget or the prices, right? I would encourage people out there to create a hybrid for yourself.
Yeah.
I've started now just to send what the price is I've decided that a thing is, and just make sure I heavily explain that this is the price and this is the value that you get. However, this is like over your head, over your budget, more than you expected, whatever the case is. I'm going to invite you to tell me what you have to work with. And maybe that's going to help you frame this a little better. If it scares you away, that may be not a bad thing either. But, because sometimes price is a filtering thing for us. Yeah. But at least then you have some understanding of the value. So there's a hybrid, way to approach that. But I do think it's important, like you said, for people to just have some idea. And maybe it's an overall budget, right? I'm getting started. This is what I'm going to do for marketing. Mm-hmm. I have to do everything in this amount of money. And I'm just trying to get prices and trying to fit and figure out. That's okay too. Yeah. But you gotta have some idea of how much you have to work with somewhere. So that's a really good one. But it's really hard for people. And design is very intangible to some people. They're like, create a brand aesthetic, and you're like, okay.
I'm gonna say something, and this is no shade. It may sting some people, it may not. But I will say that when it comes to like setting a budget or knowing what you want to spend on something, and you, especially when you're reaching outside of yourself, when you're reaching out to somebody else, another professional, like, if you are not ready and willing to invest to build your business, I think that the steps that you need to go through before you worry about a brand aesthetic. Like, if that's something that you're not really ready to invest in, maybe it's some other steps that you need to like oil up, shine up, and really believe in and know brand aesthetic is what's going to get you to the next level. Because I will say, there are products and businesses who thrive with little to no aesthetic, very basically. And I think sometimes people use because visuals are very easy to like kind of establish yourself really quickly. Anytime somebody gets an idea and now they have a business, they go to get a logo made and they throw it out on the internet and, hey, this is my business, I'm here, but there's no backbone to it. So sometimes if you're scared or unsure about investing in somebody else, maybe you need to build that backbone up a little bit more before you reach out to them.
I'm gonna let that marinate in the spirit of anyone who's watching. But you are so correct. And there are many steps before you get there, and there's so much you can do yourself. Before you go to that level of investments, because sometimes it is that you need to take a couple steps back. That doesn't mean, and I don't want people to hear you saying, well, stop doing what you're doing. It's like, no, it's fine to continue on. Just recognize what you have to come to the table with and be willing to invest there, whether it's time, money, energy, or otherwise. And that's good advice, because I talk to a lot of those people who they know they need it at some point, but they're just really not ready for it. And that's hard to tell people. So,
and some people view the brand aesthetic as the first step, and it's not the first step.
It's not. It's nothing. It's not. It's not.
And I say that again. A lot of my current mindset comes from my experience.
Yeah.
And starting a business, like I can create beautiful looks and make stuff look so great, but then there's no meat behind it, and I have done that, but I made it through. I pressed forward and all of that, but basically, people have a certain perception of it, and then on the back end, does it actually meet up with that beautiful aesthetic on the outside? So building the aesthetic is not necessarily the first. It's not the first step at all, actually.
That's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like you go and you put all of this into the grandness of, how people see you and how they enter, when the truth is you behind the curtain, like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing here? But, and I kind of want to pause there for a second, because I know you as a business owner and seeing you kind of evolve from doing some of those things, having some of those hard lessons, which I've done the same thing. What level of frustration does it create for people when they do that? Like when you arrived at a place where you're like, hey, the aesthetic is there and it seems to be kind of floating okay, but then you realize, okay, but this is not okay. What does that trigger for you as a business owner or as a creative even? Are there any emotions that come with that realization? And how did you kind of talk yourself into, okay, I need to put this down or back up and start at another step?
I think what it does is it almost, I say what it did for me, because I can't say what it would do for everybody. But what it did for me was it almost put me out of one category, but not quite in the other category. So I don't look like I'm a beginner, which I was a lot of that time, but I can't quite reach the space of people who actually could afford these luxury clothes that I'm trying to sell.
Right.
So it put me in a weird limbo place where I'm popping to most people who see me and know me, like they see the visuals and they're like, oh, this looks amazing. You're doing so good. But the bank account ain't lining up with how great that page looks or, whatever. So I think that's what it did. It put me in a limbo phase because I just wasn't, I wasn't clear on what it was that I was doing.
It's stressful. That limbo phase is stressful because you feel like, because you're getting that feedback sometimes about how strong of an aesthetic you have, but because you haven't done that work, you feel like, well, I should be, because people think you get caught up in the perception.
Yep.
And at some point you just have to look at yourself and go, okay, all right. Let me not get caught up in the hype. It's not what it looks like.
Because you have all of these people who are rocking with you and they're like, oh yeah, I don't know why you haven't blown up yet. Like your stuff looks so good and blah. Like I've gone to people and showed them my work and showed them my page and they looking at it and they just like, I don't understand why you're not popping. Like I see this and this looks amazing, but it's because behind that was no strategy. Behind that was no true vision. Like there was no measurable goals, no benchmarks, none of that, no financials, none of that was behind it. But I had the beautiful aesthetic on the outside.
Y'all, I'm gonna pass the collection plate through the comments, because this is such a full circle part of this conversation though, because you started with, here's what I think you need to have. And honestly, to hear you say, I have been to that place, I know what it feels like for it to look great, and brand aesthetic is so important, but it cannot be step one for anybody. Like, it's not step one, and that's hard for people to embrace. But I'm glad for people to hear you say both sides of it, because people think that I just be making stuff up. Like, they think I just won't. They might not talk. I always tell people, I always talk myself out of a lot of money, because I'll have these discovery meetings and these conversations, and I'm like, you're not ready for this. Like, I would love that revenue. I really would. However, I would not be doing you a service to make you a long-term partner if you don't do these basic things first. And that's hard for people to hear. And I think sometimes that's perceived as, oh, they're too good for me, or I don't have enough money for them, or whatever. It's like, no, I'm just trying to keep you from wasting money. Because how many times do we talk to people who come back and say, I spent thousands of dollars on something and it just never quite, and so now they come to you with their hand closed, like, I'm only putting in so much because I've been burned. It's like, well, you might have lit that fire yourself. Why you talking about you got burned by somebody else?
Yeah. And you gotta know why you're trying to get to each next component of the whole marketing machine, because it's a lot of steps that like act as the qualifier or the key to the next door. So it's like, once you have the story, then you're like, okay, I know what this is, I know what I'm selling, and I just need to communicate it visually to the people. So then you have the key where you can open up the door to, visuals and brand aesthetic and all of that. And then that opens up the door to physical and in-person, aesthetic. And like, it's all just another step, like another extension, basically.
That's how life is lived. All right. So before I ask the last question that I have, we're about 10 minutes before we end. And that question, so that you all know, in case you have the same question, you don't want to ask it. Everybody always wants to know what tools you use. You have such a great aesthetic in all the spaces. So I'm sure people want to know what apps or platforms and things you use to make that happen. Before you answer that, I just want to take a moment to make sure you all, again, are connected with DeAndre. Make sure you are following Home Candle Co. Make sure you're following Love and Oscar, which we haven't talked a lot about tonight, but you should just go and see what it is. Be curious, go find out. And make sure you also go to www.homecandle.co. I do that every time. And check that out. Join the email list, because goodies happen in the email list. Make sure you're doing that. Also, just a reminder, if you're watching the replay, this may not even matter to you, but next week we are doing branding basics. I will be the only person you have to deal with next week, but we will be doing that next week and having a good time. So just another reminder, make sure you are checking out homecandle.co and on Instagram so that you can rock with DeAndre. Now, Derek, go ahead and drop the juicy details, because we really want to know. And I ask the same question in every one of these. What you be using?
So it's funny, because I mentioned I taught myself all this Adobe stuff or whatever, because I used to think that and at a certain point, that was one of the only ways you could create stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
But over time, what I have come to start using a lot is Canva.
Yes, Canva life.
Yes, Canva is really life, honestly. Like, I am, a graphic designer by trade or whatever, so I know the suite, the Adobe suite and all of that, but it's nothing. And I think when I started thinking of how can I create something that at some point somebody else can, and it's not tied to me, it's not tied to my computer, and I have to get up and go do this or whatever, like, I was like, okay, Canva, it's online, it's very powerful, and it's getting more powerful as they.
Oh my gosh!
Like, it's like you literally don't have to have the Adobe suite.
I have not opened Adobe software in so long, and I really just hope one day Adobe doesn't want to send me any like money or sponsor or something, because this is not in my favor. But Canva has gotten super robust, like.
Yeah.
Even in just the last year. And I just, I always tell people, I applaud Canva for how well they have pivoted during like the pandemic stuff. It seems like they have kicked out update over update with all these things you can do. And I always tell people, if Canva was around when I learned Photoshop and Illustrator and all that stuff, I never would have learned it, because why? Right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Adobe. I really love y'all suites. I do. And there are things you cannot do in Canva. Like, let's be clear.
Yeah.
There's some things you cannot do in Canva, but it's real good. So yeah.
I'd say when I'm doing deep dive work, I'm sitting at my computer and I'm working in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop or whatever. But even I use Lightroom to edit my photos, and I use that on my phone. So pretty much, I would say get accustomed to using something on your phone, which Canva is great. For editing, Lightroom is great. Snapseed is also a great photo editor. I use an app called Clips, and then Adobe Premiere on the iPad or my phone for video as well. And then the Reels feature within Instagram is pretty great as well.
Yeah, Instagram
and then sometimes
a lot too.
Sometimes I use TikTok to like do my video, and then I will get to the last part and I just tap it so to fill my screen up, and I'll screen record it. And then put it on Instagram, because sometimes TikTok has certain effects that I like or whatever. That
Pro tip. Did y'all hear that? Let's run it back. Go on TikTok, make it.
Yeah,
make screen record. Somebody needed that in their life today.
Yeah.
Those are really helpful. Like, there's so many tools out there. And there's a learning curve for everything, but I think that sometimes it comes down to, what you feel most comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And you just gave a really great list. And so there is a replay if y'all need to play that back and go find the things.
Yeah.
But try all that.
And then if you're outsourcing and working with a designer, I would encourage you to ask them if they could build your templates in Canva, because then they've laid everything out nicely how it needs to look. And if you need to create something quickly, you have the template just to go to and edit and save and upload. And now Canva done got so good, you can create and publish to Instagram from within Canva. Yep. Like it's getting that robust, as Jackie said.
It really is. And in Elevation Academy, one of the things that members get every month is a Canva template that like I've designed for whatever the theme of stuff is. So if the theme is events or whatever, I might put together all the graphics I normally have to make for someone's virtual event, and I can just share that as a template for everyone in the academy, and they can go in and change the colors and change the words and put their logo or do whatever, or at least use it as a starting point. I think it's the one good thing I really like about Canva is that if you are a designer by trade, or if you have been doing it enough, sometimes you just need a jump off point, right? You're like, I don't really want to have to pause and like create this from the beginning. And there are thousands of templates. And if you can go in there and just kind of make it your own, and even if you're not, graphic designer by trade, still, please try to make those templates your own, because you'll notice, especially on holidays, you see a lot of the same templates over and over again. So spend a little bit of time in there trying to tweak it, move that box to the left instead of the right, change the colors, that kind of thing. But, the other thing you had mentioned earlier about, like if you need to get stock photos, Canva is actually a really great stock photo spot as well, because they source from Pexels and Pixabay. And so you could get all of that. Canva is life, which this is a great shameless plug real quick. If you have not connected with Elevation Academy, you can follow us on Instagram. If you're trying to see what I'm talking about with members and all the stuff that they get every month, which I love my members. I think there are a couple that are here, but you get all that stuff in the academy. So just go to bit.ly/visit the academy, see what it's all about. Because and we also have a Canva mini course there if you are new to Canva and you need to walk through it. So check that out. So good stuff.
I want to drop a few resources too.
Here we go.
So there's a website that sometimes when I'm looking for colors, I will go to uigradients.com, and you can click on different colors and you'll see like all different kinds of arrangements and all of that. So if you ever need some color inspiration. And then unsplash.com is a great stock photography. Pexels is a great stock photography site. Then I also sometimes will get certain graphic elements or certain graphic elements from freepix.com. That's free pix.com. And then if you want to like pay for certain resources, creative.com is also very good. They have a lot of different templates and stuff like that. And like just a whole bunch of stuff you should go in there and just search and see, because sometimes you can just buy a template bundle, manipulate it a little bit, put your colors on it, put your fonts on there, and you know, you can ride off of that for a while.
Yeah.
And then that's at a base minimum. If you don't have the money to pay somebody and you're trying to do it yourself and you have no idea what you're doing, keep your colors the same, keep your fonts the same, and use the same quality of images, quality and style of images throughout, and you will be fine. Like you could pick the most basic sans serif font out there, which is something that Beyonce do. A lot of her stuff, it's just a
Literally
same little basic font, and she changed up the colors a little bit, but get your colors together, your fonts, and be consistent in that, and you'll be fine.
Man, that's so important though. And though y'all might feel like that was like a last mention, even that itself makes a difference. If every time you post something is a different font, I don't know who you are. Like, I don't know who your brand is if I can't. Like, if everything looks different every time, and I know y'all get excited in Canva, you want to use whatever the template is using, but you can change the font, like all of those things. So just try to be consistent in all those spaces. I think that's such great advice and really a great way for us to end. If you all are out there, I know there's a slight delay. If you're out there, you can say goodbye to us. If you have questions, I'm gonna tell you for the last time, this is last call for questions, but I wanna make sure one more time that you all are remembering to make sure you go and follow, be a part of this journey of Home Candle Co. See what Derek is talking about. He shows you himself making candles and getting boxes and all kinds of stuff. So go be a part of that. I think it's really important, whether you are someone who is interested in candles or you're maybe just a small business owner, an entrepreneur who's just getting started. It's a great story to be a part of. Make sure you are connecting in all those places. And, you know, I just have to thank you, Derek, so much for being here with me. I love you so much. You're so awesome. So thank you for being here. Do you have any last thoughts? I really think you just gave a really great little drop of jewels right there. So I want to end it, but any last thoughts before we say goodbye to everyone?
No, I resources and the things that you can do to start to, like, you know, streamline your aesthetic today, really. So
no, like,
yeah,
like
no,
when you get off,
all hearts and minds are here.
Oh, I'm sorry. My mind went clear. I was reading that Megan enjoyed us. Say it again.
Oh, I was just saying all hearts and minds are clear, but now they are.
Yes, deep breaths. All right. Well, if you are out there watching and you have enjoyed this, we are so glad that you are here. If you're watching the replay, thank you for spending this time. Be sure to watch the replay if you're here with us right now and get all of the names of all of the things. If you have questions, I'm just going to invite you to hit Derek and his DMs on Instagram. That'll accomplish two things. One, for you to get what you need, and two, for you to go ahead and find him and follow. Boom. We'll do that together. So thank you all for being here. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Bye.